Coach, hey, thanks for joining me on this simple coach-to-coach interview. Do appreciate you taking the time. Battling Bishop, new head coach. Thank you for today.
Yeah, of course. I'm a fan of the channel, and I've seen many, so I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Fans of the channel. All right.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, you're, as I mentioned, you are a rookie. So having never been on this podcast, your now former boss? Your now former boss has been on a few times. Big fan, Dr. J. Martin. You've just taken over, but, can we just kick off? Could you just give me a, rundown of your soccer journey and how you ended up where you're sitting today?
Yeah, so I grew up in Columbus, so I was always well aware of Ohio Wesleyan and Jay, and we were joking about this the other day. I was considering playing at OWU, and I decided to play somewhere else, and I definitely paid that price the 3 times I played against Jay in my college career. But after I graduated,
happens to a lot of people.
Yes,
So
yes. Sure. After I graduated, I started to get into coaching. I'm a big Barcelona fan, so at that time it was like 2008. So
my Lord,
era started, and I was just all in. So was coaching high school and club. I'd seen Jade speak at a couple like coaching clinics that my club put on, and decided to kind of make that jump to college soccer, and figured, why not try to learn from the best there is. So I started as a volunteer coach in 2014. That was the year we made the Final Four, so it was really an incredible experience to kind of soak up all of that into one season. And eventually, volunteer for a few years, part-time, full-time, associate head coach, and then, where I am now. So a lot of it has been, trying to, like you talked about, kind of an outsider's perspective. What is it about OWU that makes them so successful? Like, what's the secret sauce? So that was always my first kind of attraction, is like, what are they doing that is so consistently effective? And then obviously getting to work with Jay. I mean, we've been together for over 200 games in my 11 years here. So, coaching good players and getting good players is always a helpful step in that direction. But really understanding the full picture of, how to run a program and how to interact and how to build relationships. I mean, that's been definitely the biggest benefit of my time here so far. So.
Because in my conversations with Jay in the past, he had I don't know if it's unique, but he had a kind of a unique approach to his players and the team and the culture he built throughout the years that was a big part of, I think, the success. Right? Like, are you? I mean, is that something that you really gravitated towards as well? Not just it never seemed to me when I talked to him about the X's and O's. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was just so much more. Is that a fair assessment?
For sure. I mean, yeah. I was really fortunate to have great coaches growing up, and looking back now, I realize, like, yeah, we had good teams and things like that, but I knew the coach really cared about me and was interested in me. And, it took me, honestly, like, I'll never forget. It was like the second week, my first year here, just already seeing what's different. I was like, oh, this makes sense. It's, it's goal setting. It's holding people to a standard of what the level that you think they can get to, and keeping them to that every day. And yeah, like the X's and O's, like I've been here for over a decade, and even myself, kind of my development, it's like, coming up with a good practice session or a good practice plan is not super high on my list as it was maybe 10 years ago. Like, I got to have the most perfect session. But it's, can you create an environment where, Guys are excited to come to practice. You can make it enjoyable. It ends in a positive note. And then like right now in the off season, I could care less. Our spring season starts in a couple of weeks, just when the weather kind of breaks a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really thinking about, what are we going to do and what system are we going to work on. It's, I'm spending a lot of time with the guys individually and as a group, and trying to figure out, you guys are a really unique group. We're the first post J team, and what do you guys want to accomplish, and what do you want people to say about us, when we're training, when we're playing games, and just in general, like, oh, you're Nobu player,
Mm-hmm.
kind of that impression that we want to give off. And those things, when you do that with guys who are good players, that just elevates you to the next level. So in short, yes, that attention and dedication and caring about your players off the field, on the field, about whatever, was quickly identified in my mind that this is why this place is special.
Yeah. It was a unique conversation, like when I had with him, which struck with me was that, and it sort of goes to my own thinking now. Like I don't mean this in a bad way. Like the game of soccer doesn't interest me so much. Like the game itself, I love to watch, and I'll watch any game that's on there. I'll just watch. But I'm more interested in all the stuff around it. How do you get a good team together? How do you keep a locker room together? I find that so much more fascinating and interesting and impactful than I do, hey, how are you moving the pieces on the chessboard?
Yeah.
And he
And we're
struck
really
me
lucky.
as totally like that. That I don't care about that. Not that he doesn't care, but
And we're really lucky. I mean, we have our own soccer complex. We have a
mm,
common
yeah.
room, a locker room. So it's literally an environment where we interact all the time before, after practice. And, we're not talking about tactics. We're just hanging out and getting to know each other. And I think it just makes everyone feel comfortable to be themselves. And, everyone's going to be at their best when they're feeling like they
Mm-hmm.
are themselves. But yeah, I'm same with you. Like, I love coaching. I love trying to
Mm-hmm.
win. I love all that part. But, in our job, like my friends who have, normal jobs, they ask me like, well, what do you do all day? And, very, very little bit of it. And even, of course, our season is so small compared to the full year.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting to know these guys and
Yeah.
understanding what makes them tick and how I can connect with them. I mean, it's
Yeah.
no different than any other job. It's just that our job performance is, live online for everyone to see and
Yeah.
judge.
Okay. All right. So this is ripping the band aid off. Can I ask you, name something or say, what are you looking to change? Aside from the fact that just the mere fact of you being the head coach is probably the most dramatic change in Ohio Wesleyan soccer history.
Yeah.
But what you being the new guy, the new old guy. Yeah,
Neither of
however that
us.
would work. Yeah, yeah. What is it that you're looking to change that would be something more aligned to the way you think about the game or the way you think about the locker room?
Yeah, it's a great
That's
question.
$1 million question right there. It's getting hot, isn't it? You're feeling it.
Yeah,
It's getting hot.
yeah. I mean, the stuff that I'll always continue to reflect on is, not only has Jay won all of these things, but he's been able to connect with the players from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and so forth. And clearly, there's things that are timeless that are going to work. I think my spin on it is, I just ended, a long career coaching club, where I was, doing both and was really connected with, the next generation of guys we're going to coach at the college level. So I think, just being a little bit more in tune with kind of the generation that we're coaching nowadays, and also being a part of figuring out what these guys are looking for, because guys I feel like nowadays are so much more interested in what they're going to do in college besides the soccer part, which is great. They're very
Mm-hmm.
motivated with what they want to study and things like that. So I think just my constant involvement with the younger players nowadays has really helped me with
Mm-hmm.
that, and will help me move forward with how to kind of communicate and set the tone with what we want. And I think the second part is, I'm a very, um, like, not to negate what I said earlier, but I'm very, when it's time to coach soccer and train soccer, I'm very specific. And, my biggest fear as a coach is that I don't have a clear, concise answer for a player or a team that wants to get better. So I put
Mm-hmm.
a lot of work in being really direct with what it's going to look like and how we're going to get there, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
training, game plans, and so forth. And even like the weight room, we're the guys are working out. We have a strength conditioning coach now, and I met with him, and I'm like, I want our team to be the best team you have of all the teams that you're working with. This is my idea of what that looks like, but what do you think that's going to look like? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very intense with them right now about what does an OU soccer player look like every day. And
Mm-hmm.
because it is, it's about to be March, we're so far from preseason. I'm really trying to set that tone with the guys where, yes, we're so far from, opening weekend, but this is where we're going to get better. And this is how we're going to close the gap on, where we've ended up the past few years and where we want to go. So kind of that
Mm-hmm.
daily habit and focus on, like, am I getting better today in some regard? And that's going to, fit under our umbrella of, being successful here.
Mm-hmm. But has there been has right? I talked to a lot of coaches, the new coaches, right? They came in from outside. They come in. Oh my God, I'm drinking from a fire hose. 90 days. I got practice. What am I going to do? What was it that much? Was it uh, was it just very smooth for you to take over this role? You know what I mean? Like there was not, unless the demands of the job at Ohio Wesleyan are so much greater, but it was the transition pretty easy when it was decided, hey, you're going to be the new head coach, and Jay is retiring and stepping aside. Was that transition for you just pretty seamless?
I'd say for the most part. And, Jay is, I know it might be a crazy thing to hear, but, Jay is really big on empowering the team,
Mm-hmm.
players, and the staff. So, um, my first year, if he was like, hey, do you want to warm the team up? Whatever my opportunity was going to be to coach and
Mm-hmm.
interact and kind of be the lead and whatever, I took it and ran with it. And over the years,
Mm-hmm.
he's allowed me to do, more and more and more, which has been a huge part of my development. And
Mm-hmm.
being able to, audition's not the right word, but to be able to do this and then have my mentor literally right next to me is
Mm-hmm.
such a unique experience. I mean, it's really, really unique in sports across. Um, but I'd say, obviously this kind of transition was in the works and planned for a while. So, for the guys, I think right now it's pretty normal and seems pretty standard. I think the real kind of strange feeling is going to be, we start preseason next year and he's just not, not on the sidelines. I think that'll be kind of just a really strange thing to kind of get comfortable with. But
Yeah.
he's still going to continue teaching at the school. So he's, I see him and talk to him every day. So I think things just like his presence not being there will be
Yeah.
a little bizarre at first, but
Mm-hmm.
he's really done a great job preparing me for this role. So it feels, pretty smooth right now. And I think, and I talked to the guys too, I said, it'll be the kiss of death of me if I think, I have to make the tournament next year in order to like prove myself. I'm confident in what I've done here and what I
Mm-hmm.
can do as the main guy, and so I can stay focused on the process that I want. I'm confident I'm going to do a great job here, and I think the guys are kind of on board with that.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just say, right. It sounds like they were bought in from the beginning. Like there's no, you don't have to adjust, or they don't have to adjust to a new Ohio Wesleyan soccer tradition. They're sort of still knee deep in it and immersed in it.
Yeah, I think again, like the foundational stuff that has just stood the test of time. here, I'd be dumb to try to change that whole thing up. But I think,
Yeah.
I'm just really, you know, I've been here for 11 years because at one point when I was just trying to experience and learn from this legend, um, I was like, I think I can, like, I want to take over for him. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
prove to myself that I can do it. And I think that kind of confidence, and again, the amount of opportunities that Jay kind of gave me, it's the guys they kind of have a good idea of what it's going to be like. And of course
Yeah.
there'll be some things that are different. It's not going to be life changing, crazy changes, but I like to do things a little bit differently. And Jay and I work differently in some ways, which has been great. I think that's what's made us work so well together over the years. But I think they're really excited about the challenge of, like, what is the program going to look like, with Jay not on the sidelines. So I think we've kind of, there's pressure to it, but most pressure is self-inflicted, and I think we've approached it in a really positive, exciting way where the guys are really ready to get going.
Yeah. Is what this is a terrible question, but like, what concerns you? What scares you about taking this over? Like, that's a brutal question. Like, I'm sorry to ask that, but I'm curious.
No.
Like, I don't want to, like, hit Jay's, like, legacy, 40 plus years success, all those things speak for themselves, right? And here you are, his longtime assistant, stepping into that role, carrying the mantle of all of those great successes. And so I'm just curious, like, man, what that the pressure, right? Like, and what are those things that you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I got it, for as much as you're probably trying not to, but, like, sort of what's the anxiety what are the anxieties that you're experiencing?
I mean, anytime you take over for a legend in the history of sports, there's always, like, an acclimation period. And obviously at Ohio Wesleyan, we don't really take on, acclimation periods. So when I think about this stuff, I try not to make it like, me against the world. But, I feel like I've been really successful here. I've been successful leading. I was a ECNL director for Ohio Premier for, over 5 years and did a really good job with that, and was successful coaching high school before that. So I've always been really confident in myself as a coach and a head coach. I think that, with what you're kind of getting at, it's like, I know it's going to be a process and there's going to be ups and downs. Like, if we hit the ground running and do all these things, that's great. If we hit some bumps in the road and whatever, like, that's fine too. Like, I try to look at things where, baby steps towards what ultimately I want this program to continue doing and what I want my twist to be. So I've just learned, like, I mean, this, you talk to all these coaches. I mean, every year it gets harder and harder with recruiting. It gets harder and harder with winning. Yeah. I mean, there's, in our, Great Lakes region alone, I mean, there are so many good programs. And, but, the way that I kind of was as a player and a coach, the coaches that I had, we always were in these environments where it was like sink or swim. Like, we wanted to play the best teams we could. Obviously at OWU, we play a brutal schedule every single year. And, I mean, in 2022, we had, we started off 0-4-2. It was the worst start in program history. And, of course, I'm thinking, like, cool, like, my name's on this. And, like, this is not a, it's not a thing that I wanted to incorporate myself with the program. But, what happened after that is we won like 12 games in a row and didn't give up a goal in a whole month, and beat probably one of the best Kenyan teams that I've coached against in my time here. And it was incredible. And we needed that. We weren't even playing poorly. It just, things weren't working in our favor. And that's it's soccer. It's a brutal sport. I mean, you need so much luck. So I think these experiences, even here, have helped me realize, like, day by day, chip away, as long as
Yeah.
you're collectively moving in the right direction, like it's going to work out. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, and I think they'll we lose a big game or whatever. Of course, internally, I'm gonna everyone has that voice in their head, but I'm a veteran here, and I know that if you keep doing the right things, it's you're gonna get rewarded for it. So I think in
Yeah.
this new role, my mindset is the same. I just have to kind of lead that um, positivity and optimism because that's what I want the program to look like. So
Yeah. That's interesting you said that because one of the things that struck me in my conversations with Dre and a lot of coaches, but especially when I talked to Jay and he about that 0-4-2 start, he like it was just like we know what we're doing. We're just going to keep doing it until the results go our way. And sure enough, you guys went. I mean, that was a pretty incredible run in its own right because you don't. It's not like your schedule got easy or anything to that, right? Like, and you just, so, again, you just did what you did. You didn't change the way you played. You didn't. None of that. I haven't watched you guys countless times. Like you didn't. Nothing changed from that 0-4-2 start to the 1-4-2 game. That first game and that second. You just guys, it clicked. It went on a roll and it worked. What you were doing. So
yeah, so we try to chop it up too. I mean, it's like
yeah,
when you have a brutal schedule, like this past season, our first 8 games were Mount Union, Stevens, Calvin, Hope, Otterbein,
yeah,
John Carroll, Carnegie, and Ohio Northern. And we
yeah,
look at that and we're like, we could be 0-8, we could be 8-0. Like who knows? So it's just focusing on the week, getting
yeah,
through those games, and yeah, sticking to the program. Like
yeah,
if you do the right things, it'll pay off, and you'll get rewarded for it.
yeah, yeah. When do you guys start? Is it August 16th, 7th,
Yeah, it's always
15th?
like the late teens in
Yeah, yeah,
August.
yeah, yeah. Let how I mean this is a dumb question, but how deep were you in the recruiting process for the upcoming class? I'm assuming that you didn't shy away from the recruiting aspects of the job, which are huge. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
um,
we have like for this class coming in next year.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We've done. I mean, we're up to 6 guys right now, and feel really good about what we have coming. And I know you've talked to other coaches about this. It's like, I just went down to IMG for their event a couple weeks ago, and was hoping to get a head start with the juniors, but there's still so many seniors who are good and uncommitted. So we're gonna like right now we're still doing visits with 2025s with seniors, and also starting with the junior class. And for me personally, not coaching club anymore. I mean, I'm already so far ahead than I've ever been because I was so locked. I mean, every day I'd have to leave here at 3 o'clock and make trainings, and every event I would go to recruit would be only ECNL. And not only that, but I'm also coaching 3 to 6 games at that same event. So yeah, we feel really good about the class so far, and there's still a few more spots. I mean, we graduated 9 seniors, a really strong veteran class. So we want to reload with guys like we do every year. But yeah, we're still trying to wrap up a few more guys in this class, and we'll start up, with juniors and things like that in a couple of weeks once we kind of close the books on the 25s.
yeah. Did anyone express any concerns about new coach? I mean that, yeah, because that's an impactful thing. Even though the circumstance, I think you're like hand in glove, right? Like it just makes total sense. And so, but I'm just curious, did anyone know, oh, Jay's not my coach? Did any of that sort of conversation come up, or is Ohio Wesleyan, right? Ohio Wesleyan, like that's what kids are looking at, like, oh, it's Ohio Wesleyan.
Yeah, I think it was more of a challenge a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
more so with them not knowing, how much longer Jay was going to be. I mean, people were asking Jay when he's going to retire. When I played, I mean, it was a question that he always was asked, and it was like, why would he go somewhere else or stop? He's doing great.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think that is always a thing that came up, and then even for me, you've interviewed a bunch of coaches who, were assistants somewhere else and got a head coaching job somewhere else. So, they were also wondering me, like, okay, is Matt going to be here, or is he going to look to take a job somewhere else? So I think honestly, one of the beauties of kind of the planned succession is once that became apparent, it just made it really smooth, like you asked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's not even like I'm here a year or two into my career here. I mean, I've been here for over a decade, so I've been a part of a lot. So I think they feel good knowing that, I've been here for a long time. I've been a part of, a good chunk, not a good chunk, but 11 years of Jay's, long historic career. So
like I said, hand in glove, right? Like you just no surprise, right? Can I ask? And I mean, was there any point in your 10, 11 years as an assistant that you thought, maybe it's time for me to go to test my head coaching skills maybe earlier than now?
Yeah, I mean, I think early on it was more just to get some experience and see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think, probably more after kind of the COVID 2020.
Yeah.
I was a lot more, not aggressive, but if there was a good thing that opened up, I mean, I've been on, so I have. I mean, I looked at a lot of places and had, was a finalist at a lot of good programs and even turned a couple down where at that point I knew like I'm pretty close to kind of being able to take this over. So, but I think honestly, most of it was just to see what would happen and get that experience. I mean, again, I'm confident in my abilities, and the more I coached here, the more I felt better. So I did think about it for sure, but being here, there's just a certain time where I was like, I'll kind of go for these things and see what happens. But my ultimate goal was to take over this program, and that made me feel really good about having options regardless, but knowing that ultimately this is where I want to be. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I was more asking because again, like you're in a coveted seat, like, and there's a number of coveted seats, right? Like that you could, but not all are that coveted, right? And I think Ohio Wesleyan, just again, history on its side is, you can't take that away, and so it's like, wow, I gotta believe it was difficult. Like, the clash, should I stay or should I go, right? Like it probably has got to be the most difficult thing to go through because of where you're at. So it's fine.
I'm very competitive, and when I thought about some of this stuff, I was thinking like, one, if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be me, because two, the competitor in me is like, if I go somewhere and some guy takes over and starts to do a great job, like that's going to kill me. Like I want to be the guy who takes over for me. You know what I mean? So that was one thing that definitely kept me here.
Yeah. Oh, I could totally see it. It's just a great thing. So tell me about this season. Tell me from your perspective, how do you think it went? Did you guys get as far as you thought you expected to get? Was there disappointment? Any of that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Another hot, tough question. Totally the seat. I'm turning up the heat on the seat. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, every year here, I mean, obviously our ultimate goal was to get a third national championship, and, easier said than done. But so every year we get done with the season, sometimes it's hard to answer that question. Did we underachieve? Did we do what we thought? Did we overachieve? And this year was, even more special because we knew it was going to be Jay's last season. So I think, like, and again, I'll preface, like, I'm super, super competitive, and I always want to be the best team, be the best coach, etc. But I can accept that soccer is just a brutal sport. So I think
Yeah.
in my times here, um, being in the mix, being in the position where you have a chance to compete for Final Fours and so forth, like that's really what you can kind of gauge yourself on. I mean, even this past year we lost to Mary Washington at their place with 90 seconds left on an incredible goal. Um, the year
Yeah.
before we
That
lost
hurt.
to U Chicago. Yeah, last year we lost.
Yeah.
The year before lost to U Chicago with
Yeah.
like 42 seconds left. I mean, it's the margin is so small um, that you have to accept that sometimes it's going to be your day or not.
Yeah.
But so to answer your question, I think this past year, we won our conference, which was incredible. We have gone a while without winning the regular season conference, which doesn't happen often here. So we were very pleased to do that. We had some big wins against some teams that we've kind of gone back and forth with over the years, and um, I think the biggest disappointment was probably the postseason in our conference. We lost to DePaul in overtime.
DePaul. Yeah.
Just one of our center backs kind of slipped and got a breakaway, and not to say they didn't deserve to win, but it's just a brutal way to lose.
Yeah.
But even losing to Mary Washington, who's obviously a great program. Of course we felt good about getting to the next weekend. With all respect to Mary Washington, we knew it was going to be a very tough game, but we went down swinging. I mean, there was literally nothing else we could have asked our team to do that day in terms of effort and hard work. And, gauging it off of that, we felt proud of how our season went. It's just hard. I mean, it's brutal. I was talking, and you get so narrow-minded, meaning, I spoke with a coach at another program on the recruiting trail who was a great team. They lost to another great team, very close. And I'm like, that's right. It literally happens every round. It's just the margin's so narrow. So, but again, the competitor in me, I think getting back to being a consistently second weekend team is a big thing for us moving forward. And there's not a whole lot we can do to control that. Just because it's sometimes the way the ball bounces. But I think the fact that we're consistently in that mix, and when we do bow out, it's been in really close games against really good teams as well. Like we can accept that, and when you kind of have that perspective when the postseason winds down and you're kind of in the off season. But I think the guys put some pressure on themselves this year too, with it being Jay's last year, and it's hard to kind of manage that because they want to do all these things and we want to do all these things, but soccer is one of our kind of our mantras. But overall I felt really proud about what we accomplished, and we want to build that momentum into next year, of course.
Can you talk a little bit about it? You've mentioned it a couple times, how tight it's getting, how difficult the recruiting trail, how much more difficult it's becoming, how much better the teams in general are becoming. Could you talk a little bit about that, just from your vantage point? Because I think it used to be, right, this handful of teams. And for whatever reason, probably a multitude of reasons, that talent, that soccer know-how, the coaching, all that kind of stuff started to filter on down. So it's almost like you can't take any team for granted anymore. And like, yeah, we'll put them on because we'll easily dispense with them. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I know you go on some good tangents with other coaches about club, and I have plenty of opinions that probably align with you about that stuff. But I think overall, the past, let's say like 10, 15 years, club soccer has become more relevant. The level's gotten better, and that's trickled up into the college game. I think Division III soccer is really good. I mean, it's very high quality, and it's not just regionally; it's all over the place. Um, so I think that, and I think just sports in general, even at our D3 level, I think
Mm-hmm.
there's more effort put into it. There's more pride put into it, and I think just the um, the importance and the dedications kind of made the environment and the culture kind of rise at our
Mm-hmm.
level. So I love
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's only going to make everything better. We have,
Yeah.
I think, this past season, we had ourselves included 4 teams make the tournament. We have John Carroll coming next year, which is great. I mean, we play them every year. Great program. It's just going to make everyone better. So I invite that stuff for sure. Um, and then recruiting too. I think going back to the club part, it's like everyone at some point, and I was 17 once, thinks that they're going to go to Indiana or be in the MLS eventually, and that's just not the case. So I think that there's still a lot of work to do on the club side, helping players be put into a better perspective of what is going to be best for you. Um, but I think it's allowed a lot of really good players to want to be a part of the D3 experience where they can play at a high
Mm-hmm.
level, get a great education, be able to balance and juggle all these parts of their lives. Um, and D3 is a great place for those things.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's harder, but that's why I like to coach. It's if it was
Yeah.
easy, it wouldn't be fun. So
Well, this is where I'm starting to really think about, hey, why is it the case? And I do think it's because the players are getting better. There's more better players.
yeah,
But I also think a large degree is like I think when I was going through, let's just say, not everyone was a soccer coach, like was a soccer guy, had played the game, had come through. I was lucky, but that had come through the game and had had all of that experience. Some guys were, I remember one school, like the basketball coach, right? Like that was his other gig, you know. And I
yeah,
think the coaching in of itself has just gotten so much better
yeah,
across the board. Where um, now teams can better adjust to play against Ohio Wesleyan, whereas in the past they might not have been able to because they just
yeah,
didn't know any better. But
yeah.
toughest team you played, best team, toughest best.
The best team was Mary Washington. I mean, we watched a lot of film. I mean, we played them we lost to them in a very close game 2 years
Mm-hmm.
before at their place, and those guys were all back again. So
Yeah,
they were definitely the best team we played. I mean, we played. I think we had the fifth or sixth hardest schedule in the country this past year. But
yeah,
Mary Washington, it was just they had size, they had speed, they had everything. If you focused on one or two guys, they had other guys who stepped up. I mean, I thought Brady West, who was an unbelievable player for us,
yeah.
did a really good job on Carter Berg, who's one of the best forwards in the country.
Forwards in the
Um,
country, absolutely.
yeah, and I'm blanking on the midfielder's name who scored the goal to win the game for him. Um, but he was unbelievable. I mean, we
Yeah,
knew if we shut down Carter, if we limited his touches, that help us a lot, especially keeping them out of the net. Um, but I mean, they just had pace out wide. They were good in the midfield. They just won everything in the middle. So they just had everything. It was just pick your poison with them. So that was
yeah,
really impressive with them. They have a great coach and a great staff. And um, you know, again, I hate losing more than anything. But when you lose a close game against a team like that, and you gave them everything, you can accept that easier.
yeah,
And they were very, very impressive.
yeah. I will say, like, there were games I watched them, and I thought I had them ranked number one for basically the entire season. Like, I thought they were gonna, they were gonna win it. Like, I just based on what it did. But towards the end of the season, and you guys are one of the teams that made me think that there was some vulnerability to the team. Whereas, like on the girls' side, Wash U, like there was no vulnerability there. You just watch them like, yeah, no. when you played them, I'm trying to think who else was I was sort of like, there's something there that, man, if the right time at the right place, they could be broken down and ultimately ended up happening. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we've
but they were
had
so solid, you know, like finding those little cracks is like, you know, like how do you do
yeah,
that, right? So
and, we've had tons of teams here that went into the season as the number one seed or undefeated and
hmm
fell short. So,
yeah,
but with them, on top of what they had on the field, they had depth, they had
yeah,
experience.
their bench, yeah,
I mean, I was
yeah,
watching. Anytime you scout an opponent in Division Three and you're watching them play Virginia on ESPN in a tight game,
yeah,
you're like, the team is pretty good.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. That was very true. Like they're not. Yeah, you're like that. That goes to my whole other thing. Like you could take like the top 25 D3 teams and put them in. I'm not saying play the top 25 in Division One, but you could put them in a in a league and in a conference, and they could hold their own. I think all of those
100%,
teams could
100%.
hold their own.
Yeah,
And that game, that was one of the games where I was like, wow, they're so much better than because you right like so much better than you realize because
yeah,
they go up against this Division One team like
yeah,
Virginia. I think that's a big deal. I think that was a huge. That was huge. I really liked seeing it, right? Because
yeah.
for us, like we're touting it, like yeah, they can play, and nobody believes it. And you can point to a
Yeah.
game, like watch that game. They can hang. They can hang.
Right.
So how much are you focused on the soccer part for the spring? You mentioned that you're not. It's not so much to your in the forefront, but how much of it's going to be soccer? How much is it going to be? I'll just say getting the guys tuned in
Yeah.
to yeah,
So one thing is, we graduated 9 guys. So
yeah,
obviously that's -9. We have 5 of our juniors are studying abroad in Italy right now. So what we
nice.
have is a smaller, younger
Mm,
team. So one thing I really want to focus on in the spring is a lot of competing and a lot of playing because guys are going to have more opportunities than they did, in the
mm,
fall. So that's a big part of it. With Division 3 only getting one game, I think competing and playing is really important because they need to have that fix because they only have one game they're kind of getting ready for. And then for me, I spent a lot of time in our kind of postseason interviews figuring out, feedback from the guys, and a lot of it is like more functional work, more technical work. That is just so hard to squeeze into training in the fall because you just played a game or you're getting ready for a game. So I think definitely getting that competitive fix from the guys, um, and really just reps of you think about like I talked to one of our forwards who played a decent amount, and I'm thinking about we're going over some chances he missed in a game and things like that, and it's like it got me thinking how many reps and chances did you have in the fall to work on finishing? Because if we're doing things as a team, you're getting a couple touches and a couple chances, but the spring's really where we can work on just reps and reps and getting them used to what their main job is and really focusing on the quality and the technique and things like that. So I think that's
mm,
those kind of 3 things are my biggest focus. And then I think, like I said earlier, just it doesn't matter to me that we only have one game. I mean, obviously we would love to have more, but when we clock in and clock out
mm.
up at the complex, like I don't care that it's March, like it's 100%. We're bought in, we're working hard, we're enjoying it, and just using that to really springboard us into the summer where it's like guys are home, but they're like, I want to come back as soon as possible. I want to keep this thing going. So
Yeah, yeah. Have you thought about have you thought about the fall yet or no?
not really. I mean, for me, it was like getting the schedule done. It was
Yeah.
always like, okay, like it's done. The kickoff times are set. Like I can put that away for a little bit, but
Mm,
um, not really. And it's
Yeah.
not that I'm
Yeah.
like avoiding thinking about it. I mean, I'm very excited about it, but I just know that the only thing I can do about that now is just wait. And to use that time, it's just, getting that momentum and that
Yeah.
mojo going is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, now that you brought it up, I'm excited and I can't wait. But I really want to focus on right now with the guys and how we can just get that 1% better. So when we come back in
Yeah.
preseason, we're good to go. So
Yeah. So a couple more questions. I want to be cognizant that it is a Friday. And probably, some fun things to do this evening. But what you said you had six. You had six guys who are committed already for the fall.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I'll let you know if I'm committed for the fall as well here over the weekend. So you just got to give me
yeah,
a little bit more time. I'm entertaining a lot of offers. Just
I'm sure.
what do you have a number? Do you have a number that you're aiming for, or because you're losing 9, you're gaining 6, so you're down 3. Are you looking to fill that 3? I don't know what your roster size is, so I don't know if that's a big
Yeah,
deal or not.
yeah. For us, in terms of the roster size, and maybe that's one slight change that I'm kind of focused on. It's really, I've never been a fan of big rosters because, I want to make sure that like the competition part of our program is really important. And,
Mm-hmm.
we say this to our recruits and the guys on the team. It's, we want to have each position have one or two guys who can have an impact immediately, whether they're freshmen or seniors or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and every day, whatever happens, you wipe that slate clean, and the next day you have to earn it again. So that's obviously harder to pull off when you have a bigger roster,
Yeah.
from our perspective. So
Yeah.
for me, like we feel really good about what we have right now. Obviously, there's some positional stuff that we're focused on because we want to make sure we have healthy competition in each position.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, uh, if we can get three more guys that fit that plan, and
Bill.
we know
Yeah.
for sure can step in right away, then we're going to
Mm-hmm.
do it. And if we
Mm-hmm.
can't find those guys, or maybe the guys interested, we're not sure if they can have that impact right away, then we'll probably kind of hit the brakes on that. So,
Yeah.
but also, like I said, we lose 10 seniors the following year. So if we
Oh
do
yeah.
match that number or go one or two above, like within the context of what I just said, you can never have too many great players. So as long as it
Yeah.
fits kind of our overall size and how that breaks up into positions, then we'll keep going. But kind of all under that pretext of healthy competition at each spot.
I can't remember who I was speaking with that they said their roster and who they bring in, the numbers are always a condition of the players, and it's not a condition of a number.
Yeah,
Like 9 or 10, that's a number. But I have 6 really great kids who are incoming
yeah,
freshmen. That's it. Like that's the number that I'm going with is 6 because I have the players, not
yeah. And
not
I
taking
and I
somebody
never,
just to take it to fill a roster spot, right? I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that becomes problematic. I would think, yeah, it becomes problematic. Like you have to deal with somebody who may not be up to the level and maybe not up to the standards and all of those things, and they become a detriment to what you're trying to accomplish. So
yeah, for sure. And like I said in the beginning, um, I'm not. You don't want to close the door on a class because some of the best players we've got here were really late. I mean, Brady West, who was a two-time All-American, started 80 games out of 80. Um,
yeah.
he reached out to me in like April of his senior year in high school and came on a visit and
Really,
committed. Yeah, yeah. So
really
it's things like that where
wild.
it's like
Yeah,
always keep the door open, but
yeah,
if you don't find the right person that fits your needs, then don't
yeah,
force yourself to do that.
yeah. Well, the other thing I say, especially is when it comes to the recruiting process, right? It takes you years to build up a standard and sort of where you want to be. Ohio Wesleyan. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much to it, and it takes the one guy or the two guys that you bring in that weren't really what you were looking for to wreck it all. Right, in a season, it's done. Right, and so I think, guys, you have to be hyper cautious about that. It's because you don't want to do that.
It's a lot of short-term, long-term thinking
Yeah.
simultaneously. So
yeah. Who? What do you expect this kid to be like in 4 years? Like you know that I got to believe that becomes part of the equation. Who are they going to be? What kind of player? Anyhow,
and we've had plenty here who like we thought were pretty good, and then again with our environment, if they buy in, their ceiling goes higher. So we've had guys who kind of surprise us, which is great. But that's just a byproduct of when you have a lot of really good players and you make things really competitive. They develop each other, so it's huge for us.
Yeah. Like a Messiah, right? Iron sharpens iron. Like it just that's the reality of it. And I think the more iron you have, the better it is for you, right? Like I just think it becomes, and it becomes your depth. That's how you develop your depth, I think, right? Like talk about Mary Washington. I think that's how you end up doing it. You just bring in these great players that feed off of it, and become better over time because they're playing against great players and all that. So
and depth, our big thing here is depth is a strength if you use it. Like if we're gonna have a bigger roster, it's gonna be because we have a lot of good players who are gonna play. So again, Mary Washington was a great example. It's like, and that's been a benefit of ours too. Like we make substitutions, and it's not uncommon for our level to rise because they're good players who wanted to start, and now they're going to prove why they should have started. Works out really well.
Yeah. And I always say too, like if you want to succeed, you want to get to that rarefied air, and you want to, either win a national championship or you want to be at that level where you're in the conversation. You have to have that. You cannot get through a season to win a national championship with 12 guys. It's going to take 25, I think, is the number, 20 to 25. And if you don't have 20 to 25 players who could step out on the field at any given point and deliver what you need them to deliver, you're not going to get far. I just don't think physically it's possible to do it that way, So
I mean, in the opening rounds this past season, I mean, we played a really good Catholic team the first round of the tournament and a really close 2-1 game, and it was a very fun, enjoyable, competitive game. And it's like, all right, you guys have, 18 hours to turn around, and you're going to play the number one team in the country. It's a grind for sure.
Yeah. All right, Coach, I've been asking this question, the last question of the day, to I think the last 3 or 4 coaches, and I stole it from another podcast, which I thought was like the killer question. All right. From a soccer perspective, doesn't matter. Division III, college in general, Mexican League, whatever, national teams, whatever. What is the one thing we are not talking about that we should be talking about? Hot. I know. It's getting hot.
Yeah. I mean... I think just because I've been infused with college and club for the past, 10 or so years, it's like ultimately what do we want to do with this sport in our country, and what's the correct way to get us to that? Because I think that, again, I've been really fortunate to coach here and in club a lot of really good teams, really good players. But it's just so diluted across all levels. And of course, all about winning. And, I was talking, we had a recruit visit today, and he's a winger. And I was talking to him about when I go and recruit, one of the things that drives me insane, and it's why our country has no legitimate strikers at the top level. It's because, I'll watch a forward and he's standing out wide on the sideline, and he's not trying to run him behind. He's not trying to take guys on. He's just high and wide, just waiting for the ball to come to him.
An outlet pass.
Yeah, there's no – and what's he do? He gets the ball, and then he plays a negative, and then we start all over again. There's no we're not developing guys who can read the game and take on the game, and especially in the the attacking third is be creative and use your personality and things like that. So I think for me, like, it's hard right at our level. Like, winning is obviously important, but it's trying to find a way to develop these guys to become better soccer players. So regardless of who their coach is, I think, like, I'm on a tangent now, which is probably the point of this question, but when I'm coaching my best, it's when I'm sitting and just watching and enjoying it. That's when I know that I've done my job and the guys on the field know exactly what to do and they can problem solve together. And I think coaches often get in the way and try to do too much or overcoach or don't think about, okay, maybe we're not going to be the best team or best player today, but how can I get you to that point or a step closer, for the next year or so forth. So I say that's the biggest thing. It's like winning when you're 12, who cares? Because 6 years from now, you're going to be lost. And at that point, what are you going to do? Someone who is now only getting players in, as opposed to, I've coached some guys here and there's some guys coming in that I've coached in the past. But like, how are you guys going to help me coach someone who should be ready to go at the college level,
Yeah. That is, that's very interesting, because one of my latest things that I ask rhetorically / seriously is like, what's the point of all of this? I'm like knee deep in all of these stupid arguments about soccer and what do we do, and it's, promotion, relegation, and that and the other, and then the pyramid and that, and I'm just kind of like, what does that matter to a kid in Ohio who is playing 7 levels down? Like, what are we trying to accomplish with that kid? Like, is it just to get to 22 to get to the World Cup? If that's the case, then say it, and then we'd all be better off. But right now, it just seems to be a hodgepodge of whatever you, as a club or coach, think it should be, and I just think that's all wrong. I just think it's all wrong.
There's a book I'm reading right now that talks about that, where it's like, regardless of the level, there's soccer is like, we can't even agree upon the same common language of how to play the game and things like that, and
that's very true. That is actually very, I never thought about it. That's very, sorry to interrupt, but that's very, very true.
I mean, the analogy he uses is, if you have a pilot from America and a pilot from Romania, they're learning how to fly a plane in the same way. There's no interpretation of how to fly a plane. And then with us, when you get people in a room, they're going to think different things, and it just gets diluted. And like, what's the point? What are we actually trying to do here with our team or our level or whatever? So I'm definitely with you on that.
Yeah. I've also been thinking about that, and I do think the size of the country matters, right? Like, and we're just very large, so that makes it very hard. But I've always said, for a while, I don't think it's so much the case when I lived in Spain. Like, there were certain positions that were known, that were sort of like owned by regions, like really good goalkeepers were Basque.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they were Basque goalkeepers. And they still are to a large degree. Forwards tended to be more from the center of the country. And that's a little country like Spain. And I think in the United States, maybe we should do that, like, hey, every region just have an identity and stick to it. And that's how you're going to develop your players. It's got to be better than sort of what we're doing now, which makes, to me, it's just a jumble of doesn't make sense. But
no.
Coach, this was fantastic. Loved the conversation. This was good. I liked it. Do appreciate the time. I do wish you and your men the best, and I will be following, and I will have you on the hot seat again. Maybe before preseason, just so you can give me your take on sort of how you think it's shaping up. And but I do wish you the best, and congratulations. And tell Jay I'd love to have him on again. I think we exchanged emails, but I hadn't heard back. So if he's ever interested to do another recap, that would be fantastic. So,
for sure.
But wish you the best.
Appreciate it. appreciate the time. And like I said, I've watched tons of these and really appreciate it. And I learn a lot when I hear you speak with other coaches. So it's a good resource for me. So I appreciate that.
All right. So the last question for you: do you learn from the other coaches, or are you learning from me? Like,
I'd say mostly from you. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to have you on every week. Is that okay? I'll just have you on. I love the answer. All right, Coach. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks so much.